Sometimes you meet someone, and the distance between you seems to disappear almost immediately. The conversation is easy, then it gets deeper. You talk about childhood, past relationships, the things that scare you, the things you want from life, the parts of yourself other people usually take months to reach. A few days later, you already have inside jokes. A few weeks later, this person knows things about you that some of your oldest friends do not. So when someone says, "You barely know each other," it can sound almost ridiculous, because in one sense, you do know them. You know why they struggled to trust people. You know what their parents were like. You know which relationship hurt them most. You know what makes them cry. Maybe they know all of that about you, too. And that closeness does not have to be fake. Something unusually open may really be happening. But there is another kind of knowing that even the deepest conversation cannot give you. You might know what someone believes about conflict. You do not yet know how they will handle conflict with you. You might know what they say they need when they are upset. You do not yet know what happens when you are the person who upset them. You might know their wounds. You do not yet know what those wounds will do when they meet yours. You can genuinely know someone very deeply as a person while still knowing surprisingly little about what it is actually like to be in a relationship with them. And that is the problem with fast intimacy that interests me. Not that the intimacy is necessarily false, not that there is some correct number of weeks you are supposed to wait before feeling close. The problem is that meaning can accumulate faster than evidence. The relationship begins to feel enormously important before the two of you have lived through enough different situations to know what that importance can actually rest on. That is different from simply moving too fast. Some people meet, move quickly, and build excellent relationships. Other people spend a year being cautious and still discover that they misunderstood how they function together. Time does not automatically create knowledge. Experience does. And early intimacy usually happens under unusually favorable conditions. You are curious about each other. You are paying attention. You are making time. The messages are exciting. There is anticipation around every date. There is novelty. There has not yet been a long week where both of you are tired and distracted. No resentment has accumulated. Neither of you has disappointed the other in exactly the same way 6 times. You have not yet had to make a decision where one person's priorities seriously interfere with the other's. That does not make the early relationship false. It makes it a partial sample. And some qualities of a relationship only become visible once the relationship has to carry weight. Someone may tell you, "When people get angry with me, I shut down because my parents fought constantly when I was growing up." That may be important information. It may help you understand them. But it still does not tell you what their shutting down will actually be like for you. Do they say, "I am overwhelmed, give me an hour, but I will come back and we will finish this"? Do they disappear for 3 days? Do they become cold until you apologize just to restore contact? Do they understand the pattern but still expect you to absorb all of its consequences? A biography can tell you where a pattern came from. A relationship shows you what that pattern does when it meets another person's needs. This is why self-awareness, while valuable, is not the same thing as relational capacity. Someone can explain every trigger they have. They can tell you exactly why they become distant, defensive, or overwhelmed. That may make them much easier to understand. It does not automatically make the experience of being with them easier to live with. Explanation is knowledge about the person. What they do with that explanation becomes knowledge about the relationship. The same thing happens with values. We both believe communication is everything. We both want honesty. We both hate mind games. We both think partners should maintain independence. That can feel like extraordinary compatibility. But relationships eventually turn values from sentences into costs. Communication sounds easy until the other person has something to say that you do not want to hear. Honesty sounds easy until the truth threatens the version of yourself you prefer. Independence sounds easy until your partner uses that independence to choose something you wish they would not. You do not only learn what someone believes, You learn which beliefs survive inconvenience. That is why friction can reveal things disclosure cannot. Not because conflict is automatically healthy, and not because you should manufacture difficulty to test someone. Life will provide enough difficulty on its own. You say no to something they really wanted. Can your no remain a no? Or does disagreement become evidence that you do not care? They disappoint you. Can you tell them without the whole conversation becoming about whether they meant to hurt you? Can they accept both things at once? I did not mean to hurt you, and I hurt you. You disappoint them. Can they stay connected while they are unhappy with you? Can they express anger without turning that anger into punishment? Your needs conflict. Can two legitimate realities stay in the room long enough to negotiate? Or does one person's need automatically become reasonable while the other person's becomes the problem? And this is where early closeness becomes easy to misread. You may know far more about this person than most people do. What you still do not know is who the two of you become when knowing each other starts to cost something. These are not facts someone can simply disclose on the third date. Sometimes they cannot tell you because they do not know. They may genuinely believe they are excellent at conflict because they have never had this particular conflict with this particular person. They may genuinely believe they are secure because nothing in this relationship has seriously activated their insecurity yet. They may genuinely mean it when they say, "I would never treat someone the way my ex treated me." Then, when they are afraid enough, they may discover that they have defenses of their own. People are not necessarily lying whenever reality contradicts what they once told you about themselves. Sometimes reality is producing information neither of you had access to yet. And this matters because one of the most intoxicating parts of early intimacy is being understood. Someone understands something about you that usually takes people much longer to see. You explain something you normally have to explain carefully, and they seem to get it immediately. From that feeling, a very natural inference appears. They understand me. Therefore, we fit. But understanding and compatibility are not the same thing. Someone can understand your anxiety in remarkable detail and still be unable to offer the consistency that helps you live well with it. Someone can understand your need for independence and still resent it whenever your independence costs them something. Someone can speak your emotional language fluently and still be unable to build a relationship where both of your needs have room. Being understood matters enormously. It just does not answer every question we sometimes ask it to answer. This is part of why sharing a lot very quickly can feel so powerful. When someone trusts you with something private, you feel selected. When you reveal something and they receive it well, you feel safe. Then each disclosure makes the next one easier. Very quickly, the relationship can contain an enormous amount of emotional material. But emotional material is not the same thing as shared history. You can tell someone about 20 years of your life in one night. You cannot create 6 months of experience together in one night. You can compress biography. You cannot compress every experience required to know what a relationship becomes under pressure. And sometimes we confuse the density of what has been shared with the amount of evidence we actually have. That is where meaning begins to outrun knowledge. I have never felt this close to someone. That may be true. Nobody has ever understood me like this. Also possibly true. This feels different. Maybe it does. Then, I know who this person is. That claim is larger. And then, I know what this relationship will become. Larger again. The emotional feeling underneath those claims may not have changed at all, but the conclusions being built on top of it have become much more ambitious. So I do not think the useful discipline is necessarily to slow your feelings down. Feelings are not very obedient anyway. It is to slow down the conclusions you ask those feelings to carry. This feels unusually good is one claim. This person is emotionally safe for me is another. We understand each other is one claim. We can handle conflict together is another. I want a future with them is one claim. We can build the future I am imagining is another. Those claims require different kinds of evidence. You can let the first ones be true without pretending the later ones have already been proven. That is not cynicism. It is accuracy. And it gives a strong early connection room to become something instead of forcing one beautiful month to prove the next 5 years. Because eventually, reality asks the connection to become specific. You both said honesty mattered. Now, one of you has something painful to say. You both wanted commitment. Now, commitment requires giving up an option. You both value family. Now, your families want incompatible things. You both imagined a future. Now, that future involves actual trade-offs. The relationship becomes less hypothetical. And as it becomes more specific, some possibility disappears. At the beginning, the person could be many things. The relationship could become many things. Every unanswered question leaves room for hope. Reality gradually answers those questions. Some answers are better than you expected. Some are worse. Some are simply different. A real person is narrower than an imagined one. They have specific limits, specific habits, specific needs, specific ways of disappointing you. But reality can also reveal things fantasy could never give you. Reliability you had not yet seen. Unexpected generosity. The ability to repair after conflict, not merely understand you before it. The willingness to stay engaged when staying engaged becomes inconvenient. That is a different kind of intimacy. Not intimacy created by telling each other everything. Intimacy created by having something real between you and learning how the two of you carry it. And eventually, every relationship produces information that neither person could have supplied in conversation. What happens when one of you is exhausted for weeks? What happens when one person's success changes the balance between you? What happens when one of you needs more than the other can comfortably give? What happens when resentment appears quietly instead of dramatically? What happens when you hurt each other despite both believing yourselves to be good people? What happens after the first apology? What happens after the fifth? Those are not hidden facts waiting for someone to confess them. They are relational facts. They only exist once the relationship has existed long enough to produce them. And the relationship does not only reveal the other person, it reveals you. Maybe you thought you were easygoing until something important went unmet. Maybe you thought you communicated directly until you became afraid of losing someone. Maybe you thought you wanted constant closeness until you met someone who actually offered it. Maybe you thought you were highly independent until independence stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like distance. You are learning who they are with you. They are learning who you are with them. And both of you are learning what emerges between you. That is why personal knowledge and relational knowledge can never be exactly the same thing. One tells you about two individuals. The other tells you what those individuals create when they begin affecting one another. No amount of chemistry can fully substitute for that. No amount of self-awareness can fully predict it. Part 4. 172 words/982 characters. No amount of disclosure can accelerate every part of it. Some knowledge simply has to be lived. So maybe you really did tell each other everything. Maybe the connection really was rare.
Maybe you understood parts of each other faster than either of you expected. None of that needs to be dismissed. You can say, "This feels extraordinary. I feel unusually close to you. I want this to continue. And I am still learning who we are together." Those sentences can all be true at once. You do not have to make the connections smaller in order to leave room for reality. You only have to stop asking today's closeness to answer questions that only tomorrow's relationship can answer.
Because there are things a person cannot tell you about themselves. Not because they are hiding them, because they have not happened yet. You do not have to distrust the feeling that you know someone. You just do not have to ask that feeling to know what only a relationship can show you.